Welcome, everyone. We'll get started shortly, but I would like to give people a few more moments to get their audio preferences settled before we begin. Okay, so welcome to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our presenters, I just want to cover a few technical details just in case you haven't joined an ACRO webinar in the past. We use Zoom webinar, which is similar to Zoom meeting, except that your cameras and your microphones are disabled by default. And to interact with each other, you have two main options, just for general discussions and comments. Go ahead and use the chat button. This will actually default to hosts and panelists. But if you want to send out a message to everyone, just make sure you hit click the everyone drop-down menu. And if you want to ask a specific questions for the panelists, go ahead and use the Q&A button. You can ask your questions anonymously. You can ask at any time. And before any further ado, I would like to hand it off to our panelists.
Hello, I think that's me first. Hi, everyone. Greetings. Welcome. I am Julia Finocchi. I am the Director of International at ACRO, and I'd like to welcome you to our July edition, even though it says June, it's our July edition of the EDGE User Group. This is the dog days of summer that we are in, and we have some vacationing IESC members, but I thought I'd let you know, why do we call it the dog days of summer? And traditionally, they're the year's hottest days. We've seen record temperatures lately, and they're typically the unhealthiest of days in air quality. And we've seen that as well, certainly in our area, as well as many other in the United States and Canada. But these once coincided with the year's, forgive me if I say this wrong, heliacal, or at sunrise, rising of the dog star Sirius. And ancient folks used to think that the combined heat of Sirius and the sun are what caused these hottest days of summer, therefore called the dog days because of the dog star. So without further ado, let's move on to what we're going to talk about today here in the EDGE User Group. Today's hosts are Jasmine Saidi-Kunert and Drew Carlisle, who is from ACRO. And just a little bit more about Jasmine and her role. We go to the next slide. Jasmine is the chair of the IESC. The IESC is made up of members, observers, and staff representatives, and you see their pictures and names here. We are grateful to them always for all the work that they do, volunteer work on behalf of all of our members and making EDGE better for you at all times. So the IESC, the International Education Standards Council, really is what ACRO EDGE utilizes in looking at and reviewing recommendations, updates, etc. For EDGE. So they have a combined hundreds of years probably of experience when you combine all those folks together. And they're representatives of public and private institutions, higher education institutions, and credential evaluation agencies. So this is a little bit more what they do with the placement recommendations, with collecting research. And every year they have a couple of fellows who work with them to really develop a research project and write up a research project in a white paper, and then to share that information with our members and make it accessible to all of you. So we thank them for their continued willingness to do this work and to come together every month to present the information that they've found to all of you. So with that, let's find out a little bit about you. Velma, do we have a poll ready to go?
We sure do. Let's get it started.
All right. We have a couple of questions here for you. And the first one is, are you an EDGE subscriber? Is this your first user group? And what segment of the population do you represent? If you could go ahead and answer those. This is when I should have told you about the dog days. So while you were doing this, you had something interesting to learn. But that good information, as you're filling this out, I will tell you, comes from the Old Farmer's Almanac, which is always a great publication. I think it's about $7 or $8 per year, and it's just filled with great information about when you should plant things, what the days of each month, any highlights there are, sunrise, sunset, etc. So How are we doing on our poll, Velma?
All right.
Here we
that's
go.
cool.
Are you an Edge subscriber? 96% of you, or 65 out of the 68 on here, said yes. The other 3 said no. We do hope you'll join us soon. We think this would be of great value to you, and we'd love having you here. Is this your first Edge user group? 25% said yes. That's impressive. All right, welcome. We're glad you're here. We hope you come back again in August. And the rest of you have been here before. What segment of the population do you represent? It looks like the vast majority are institutional staff. Yay. And the other 18% are evaluation service. There is one law firm represented. Welcome. We're glad you're here. All right, without further ado, then I'm going to turn it on over to my colleague, Drew Carlisle, and he will talk about the agenda. Drew?
Thanks, Julia. On that poll, I was really hoping there was going to be a question about, what about Sirius? What about the start? Like, that's interesting. We did have an opportunity in some states, in some parts of Canada, and some parts of the world to see the Aurora Borealis last night or 2 nights ago. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. But today, the thing that I want to do is talk about what the content updates we've been working on within Edge are. So we did some work on a couple of different degrees from Kuwait, both a diploma and a bachelor. There's from France, we've got a Master Spécialisé, some information that Emily's going to deliver to you guys about that. And then there's a representative kind of content update that I have in here. And we were thinking about the dog days of summer. And I was like, oh, this is like so hot weather. I wish I had a nice cool breeze. So we decided to go with Granada for the representation of what we're doing with these verification links. There's a whole lot of new information that's coming to you that's going to be published within Edge. So looking forward to sharing with you about that project. And we've got, well, it started with just Ghana talking about the postgraduate diploma in education, but you know how we do. We touch one credential and it starts off a domino chain of all kinds of other stuff. We have, let's see, the folks that are going to be with us today. We've got Shelby Sterling, we've got Emily Say, we've got Jasmine Saidi Kunert. We've got some of the folks that you've heard from before, but Robert, he's not going to be here today. He's over at the International Institute in Washington, D.C., doing that in-person learning. We've gotten back into doing that. We can give you a couple of updates from what was happening there, as well as information for future opportunities that you have to come in and get this direct information straight from all of our faculty that are providing this. And there's always going to be time for questions. As we mentioned already, if you have content related questions, put that in the Q&A. If you have friendly related banter that we just want to go back and forth, have that chat and keep it going. I love reading through all the chat, and that is where we will include hyperlinks when we're talking about things that are already available on the website. You're here looking at this webinar today, but don't forget that if you want to look at any of the old ones, we've got our free webinar archive, and I'll put that link up here in just a second, so you can go back through and see not just the Edge user groups, but all kinds of things that Acro has to offer for you. Now, I'll move on to the next slide and tell you one of the offerings that we're doing right now. We are offering that opportunity that Julia said, and we are offering the opportunity to work with the IESC. It's a wonderful thing. We focus for people early in their careers in the field, kind of their first 5 years. That's where we're really looking to instill these best practices. You're going to work directly with the IESC. You're going to have a mentor, and you're going to understand all the steps that need to be done to really have a significant contribution to the field. You get opportunities for publishing, you get to present a webinar, you get to present at the annual meeting. There's lots of professional development opportunities for you. And you also, as my friend Robert would say, you get to see how that sausage is made. On the next slide, you can see just a little bit more information about it. It's something that I really encourage you to think about, and not just for you, but if you have a colleague, someone that seems interested, someone that really likes getting deep into research projects and finding out really what that correct answer is. It's like a puzzle to them. You know those people. You're probably here on the webinar right now, but those are the people that we really want to have so that we can interact with and really teach about how to make this field even stronger than it is already. But let's go to someone that I think is really strong in this particular field. Emily, can you talk to us a little bit about Kuwait?
Absolutely. Thanks, Drew. So we received an Edge user query about PAAET, which stands for the Public Authority for Applied Education and Training. And the question was, does PATE degrees grant access to university? And so we looked at what was available on Edge to see where the gap was. And then we realized, although it was mentioned in the overview, it's actually not reflected in the credentials section. So we had to draft some entries for the credentials section, which you'll be seeing posted shortly. So we are wrapping that up and finalizing that. On to the next slide. So PATE was actually established in 1982 to cover technical and vocational education in Kuwait. What does that mean? It really focuses on addressing any gaps in the workforce there and focuses on developing a quality labor force. And they do that through the 11 institutes and 5 colleges that it oversees. So they cover technical and vocational education both at the secondary and post-secondary level. For the 11 institutes, the qualifications, the duration can vary, as well as the entry requirement. Some might enter after lower secondary, and others might enter after upper secondary. And they're really more like vocational training centers covering a wide range of areas, including construction, secretarial and office studies, tourism, beauty, fashion, etc. And so in some instances, those who complete these programs are then eligible to continue on to one of the 5 PATE colleges, which are all post-secondary. There's a College of Basic Education, which is basically teacher training, College of Business Studies, College of Technological Studies, which includes engineering sciences and computer science, a College of Health Sciences, and the College of Nursing. On to the next slide. So the most common qualification that you're going to see from the PATE College is the diploma. Those who enter must have the general secondary school certificate, and it'll range from 2 to 2.5 to 3 years of study. It's a terminal qualification, one must note. So the idea is that the diploma programs really focus on preparing students for the employment sector. So for this reason, transfer credit is quite limited, if at all. And so what we've determined for the Edge entry is that for the credential advice, it is comparable to 2 to 3 years of lower division undergraduate credit. So this is the most common credential coming out of the PATE colleges. We also do, however, see bachelor's degrees. Much less frequently because it only comes out of 3 of the 5 colleges, the College of Nursing, the College of Basic Education, and the College of Technological Studies. But it is a 4-year degree, again, following the general secondary school certificate. Again, it's a terminal qualification, preparing students mainly for the employment sector. So it's rare to see them move on to graduate study on the basis of a bachelor from the PATE College. But we do make it comparable to a US bachelor's degree in the Edge entry, which will be posted shortly. So that's Kuwait. Now we're going to move on to France and the Master Spécialisé. One of the IESC members realized that this qualification was not an Edge, so we worked on this. The MS, or Master Spécialisé, is approximately 1 year at a Grande École, or 75 ECTS credits. So on to the next slide. As a reminder to those who aren't who don't deal with the French educational system as much, higher education is mainly offered at 2 types of institutions in France, the university or the Grande École. Universities are much more theoretical in nature in terms of their subject offerings, and they are not as professionally oriented. They are very much a multidisciplinary institution and larger in size, so they have a much larger student population per institution. The most common credentials coming out of the university in France is the 3-year licence and 2-year master. The Grande École, on the other hand, is much more professionally oriented, and so they tend to only specialize in a particular discipline. So you might see, for example, an engineering school or a business and management school, that sort of thing. And for that reason, they're also smaller in size when you're talking about the number of students at a particular institution. The most common credential coming out of the Grande École is the 5-year diploma. So the Master Spécialisé is from the Grande École. Again, approximately 1 year or 75 ECTS credits. It is known as a BAC plus 6 credential, meaning it represents a total of 6 years of post-secondary study after the high school credential or the BAC. Most commonly, it is 1 year after the 5-year diploma from a Grande École. Alternatively, those with a 4-year qualification can enter if they also have 3 years of work experience. In terms of the recognition of this program, one must note that it is not under the Ministry of Higher Education and Research. It's mainly recognized in the employment sector and by the Conference or Association of Grandes Écoles. That said, we have determined that it is comparable to 1 year of graduate study. We treat these very similar to the Títulos Propios in Spain or the Lato Sensu in Brazil, where these are institution-specific qualifications, and they tend to cater to the needs of the industry and employment sector, and they are not under the Ministry of Education. So this is very much in the same vein. So that's France for you. On to the next one.
All right, so now we're moving on to Grenada, however you'd like to say that. One of the things that you'll start seeing as we are able to update these in EDGE are verification sources where you can go to see if a particular institution may be recognized. So to give you a little bit of information in Grenada, at the secondary level, the credential that you'll see is the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, and that is going to be from the Caribbean Examinations Council rather than from the local ministry. And you should be able to receive verified credentials pretty easily from CXC. Although I do want to point out to you that under CARICOM regulations, the ministries of education in each one of the 16 participating countries of the CSEC are allowed to verify credentials issued by CXC. So sometimes what we tend to see here at Adtalem Global Education is it's cheaper for the students to go to their local ministry to get verified results than it is for them to order them and wait a little bit longer from CXC. At the post-secondary level, a lot of times you're going to find the local ministry or local department or whatever it may be called in that particular country is responsible for education oversight. But some countries like Grenada have created an accreditation body. In Grenada, that was in 2014 that the Grenada National Accreditation Board, GNAB, was established. And it provides two different things. It provides recognition, which is mandatory for higher educational institutions wanting to operate within Grenada. They have to get GNAB recognition in order to legally be able to offer educational programs. And they have also started doing something called accreditation. I believe there's only one school, might be two, I think it's one, that has received accreditation at this point. So what you'll be looking for if you wanted to see since 2014, if a higher education institution is recognized or the equivalent of accredited here in the United States, is does it have GNAB recognition? There is a link on the GNAB page that shows you the list of registered institutions, when they were registered, etc. However, sometimes you may not see all of the higher education institutions on that site because there are specialized fields or regulated fields. An example of this is for medical and dental recognition. So Grenada actually has a separate body that oversees medical dental education and medical dental registration. And that's the Grenada Medical and Dental Council. And it maintains a list of accredited medical and dental programs operating within Grenada. And as I just found out yesterday, there is actually an alternative to recognition from the Grenada Medical and Dental Council. One of the universities located in Grenada, St. George's University, their School of Medicine, I believe since last September, so September 2022, is actually accredited through ACCM, the Accrediting Council of Colleges of Medicine. It's based in Ireland, and it accredits medical programs in certain countries. It has to be invited by that country's government to accredit. So it doesn't just go in and accredit, it has to have permission from the government. So you now have this alternative. So you can either have Grenada Medical Dental Council accreditation, or you can have ACCM accreditation. This is one of the ongoing projects that Drew had mentioned earlier at the start of the webinar today. So this is just one of the things that you should start noticing soon in EDGE profiles. And with that, I will turn the floor on over.
Well, Shelby, you think that you're about to get off of here, but before you go anywhere,
Oh, okay.
I did think that this might be a time where we could
Okay.
talk about the white paper where we talked about offshore medical schools just a
Yes.
little while ago, because there's got to be like a little bit of overlap with all of the different accreditation,
Oh, wow.
recognition. I put the link to the white paper, which is something that our IESC fellows that I was talking about earlier, that's something that they worked on, and you can look at
Yes.
all of this wonderful piece that was put together. I'm going to let you go though, Shelby.
And actually, I forgot to mention this, and somebody just asked in the chat about CAM HP. Oh, CAM HP. It actually kind of depends. I think the white paper that the IESC fellows wrote, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, is an excellent explanation of how medical, dental, veterinary offshore accreditation works in the CARICOM countries. And there's a section in there that explains, okay, so what is, I mean, can I not use the local government? Can I not use CAM-HP? What is ACCM? Whatever. So yes, CAM-HP is a reputable regional accreditor in the CARICOM area for medical, dental, veterinary, and then it calls other health professions, and that usually tends to mean nursing and nutrition, and there might be something else with nutrition, nursing and nutrition, I can't remember. It really depends on the country, because as I mentioned, ACCM as an accreditor is an alternative, and there are a couple of countries in CARICOM that have institutions that are both CAM-HP accredited, and then institutions that are ACCM accredited. Then you've got a country like Aruba, where Aruba falls under, I'm not even going to bother to say it in Dutch because I will slaughter it, NVAO accreditation. So you've got several different providers of education oversight in that particular area. So I highly recommend, if you have not watched the webinar, if you have not read the white paper, please go on to the archive, watch the webinar, download that paper. We used that to create our internal offshore medical, dental, veterinary accreditation policy. It's an invaluable resource. And that's just to give you an idea of the type of research that the fellows undertake. It's a wonderful resource.
It's a great example of the type of like comprehensive project that I am so impressed that this was kind of led all the way through with IESC mentors, and folks are really able to see these are all the steps that are needed if I'm really going to understand these education systems and if I'm going to communicate that outwardly. So yeah. With that, I'm gonna Jasmine, you wanna come on and talk about Ghana a little bit?
Yes, I was busy answering a comment in chat with Julia. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Drew. All right, here we are. Ghana. These postgraduate diplomas in education are coming our way from various countries where we are looking at them again and studying their purpose more carefully. And in this case, the postgraduate diploma in education does require a bachelor's degree for admission, but the bachelor's degrees are in fields other than education. So a person who is planning to teach in Ghana who does not have an undergraduate degree in education enters a postgraduate diploma specifically in education to complete additional courses in pedagogy that they would have completed had they been in a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts in Education program. So the postgraduate diploma in education is literally a top-up degree. It offers additional courses at the undergraduate level, typically what we consider to be more advanced, upper division, but leads to a postgraduate diploma in education. What we want to stress here is that this is not a graduate level qualification. It is an undergraduate program offered to those who already have a bachelor's degree and their field was not in education, but they plan to teach their subjects of specialty, and they need the pedagogy subject matters in order to be qualified to do so. The postgraduate diplomas are in education are 1 year full-time, and on completion, the person can then pursue a career in teaching at the secondary level or at the primary level. So again, admission is a bachelor's degree in fields that are not in education. The duration is 1 year. Includes coursework in pedagogy that are undergraduate level, and we will consider this qualification as 1 year, comparable to 1 year of undergraduate coursework in the US.
And
Thank
so
you.
Jasmine, after we looked at this one a little bit, I think that it kind of got us going down that education kind of rabbit hole. Are there any other things that the IESC has kind of that are coming up that we might want to talk about for a little bit, give people kind of a preview?
Sure. I mean, we are actually addressing a couple more of these sort of postgraduate diplomas or degrees in education that are offered after someone who may already have a bachelor's. So we're talking about bachelor's of education. It could be a 1 year program after a 4-year degree, or the combined 3 + 2 years. So we're looking at right now British Columbia, Canada, that has a Bachelor of Education program that is offered at various stages. So this is coming up. And every time we address one, as Emily said and Shelby said, you know, we're kind of opening the can of worms, another country and another country. So that's coming up soon. That's on the agenda. We have a lot of good topics on the agenda, but I just want to assure everyone we're addressing your questions. Some of this research takes time, but we share them in the Edge user groups every month. So thanks for your patience.
Yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. I guess one of the things that I already kind of alluded to it earlier, but we've got happening right now, just over in DC. I point right over there. It's right over in DC is where the International Institute is taking place. It was at the Royal Sonesta. This is a hotel that we've been to before. I really like the space. It's in a nice place in DC. So I'm saying when you come for the International Institute, it might be a lovely thing to take a little bit of time on the front end and the back end to enjoy a little bit more. We're going to be having another institute coming up. We used to call them fall and winter or fall and spring. Now this is going to be taking place in early 2024. It's probably still going to be coat weather. So I don't know what you want to call that, but it is in-person learning where you really get a chance to interact, go do these deep dives. When you are, and I know that it's happened to some of you, you started in domestic, you did a great job with welcoming everyone in, and you got put into a new role. These are the types of learning opportunities that can really help you to succeed in your field. We give you the confidence that you can go and you can make these decisions. We give you the ability to articulate why your decisions are the right decisions for the institution and give you that confidence that you are the most appropriate person to make these decisions. So we talk about transfer credit methodologies. We focus on a few different education systems, and you can take that information to expand it out and apply some similar approaches when understanding other educational systems. And as it says here right on screen, good for both undergraduate as well as graduate level admission decisions. And then another thing to consider moving forward to the next slide that we always try to talk about is that if you are interested in doing this research that's going to contribute something to the field, please consider the Gloria Nathanson Research Fund. We understand that your time is valuable, and this is one way that you can get a little bit of assistance to contribute to the field in a productive way. So I've been seeing that we've had a lot of questions that have been coming in here into the chats. So we're going to get to that here in just a minute. I put the link up for all of the old webinars earlier, but this is a QR code. Like I mentioned, you can look through all the old webinars, and then even while you're watching them, you can pull up your phone and take care of it. You can just have Acro on all of your devices all at once. But for right now, Julia, could you come on and help figure out how we're going to be answering all these questions? And as soon as you unmute, I am
Sure,
I'm
I
really
said,
excited
sure,
to
I'd be
hear your
glad to,
comments.
sorry. Yes, and those webinars, those links to those webinars are really a great, really a resource for you to find information and answer some questions. So we have several questions in the Q&A. Please feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit and answer the first one, and then I'm going to pass it around to others to answer some of the other questions in there. And the one I'm looking at is does Acro Edge have any resources for information on the ECTS, the European Credit Transfer System? Yes, we do. Edge has a profile on the Bologna process. If you go into that profile on the Bologna process, you will find so much information. And if you click onto the grading tab, you will find a lot of information on ECTS, on concordance, on how the grading is set up, how they've set it up. And I think it will be, yes, thanks, Shelby. She's put the link right in there. I think you will find out everything you are interested in knowing about ECTS. If you want to know more, you can certainly go over to the ENIC-NARIC sites and find more there. But I think what we have in there is pretty comprehensive and will cover any questions you might have on that.
One of the things that you will want to look at when you're looking for information on ECTS, on the grading tabs within each of the individual country or educational system profiles, if it is something that uses ECTS and we've decided to make a comment on it, you might find it there in the grading tab. That's going to be a place where you're going to find a lot of that information if it is contained within the individual profile. But as Julia mentioned and Shelby posted, the Bologna process profile does have some good base level information to get you acclimated.
And I'm going to at least pose one more, and then I'm going to toss it over to Shelby for an answer. And I'm going to read this question out for you. It is, how important is it to check the program accreditation for Ghana bachelor and master degrees? Is the GTEC website up to date and reliable in showing accurate program accreditation information? If we can't find a program on the GTEC website, does that mean it's not accredited? And is there a way to check program accreditation from previous years? Shelby?
Oh, somebody has asked a $64,000 question. So to answer your first question, yes, it's important that you look for programmatic accreditation in Ghana, because the current iteration of the bodies, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission in 2020, that was the body that took over. But prior to that, it was the National Accreditation Board, and either NAB or GTEC, you have to have programmatic accreditation. There is a problem though. It didn't start in May 2023. It started several months before that, but my office gets a number of Ghanaian credentials. So we started noticing this late fall, early spring this past year. And several of our colleagues had also noticed the same issues. And we did some research, and yes, there is a backlog of accreditation decisions at GTech. Part of this relates to COVID and the problems that everybody had to deal with COVID, but they just haven't clawed their way out of that yet. And so there are actually hundreds of programs in Ghana that are awaiting reaccreditation. Some of them have lapsed for years as a result of this backlog. And so because of that, on the live site, you're probably not going to see all of the program accreditation. There is program accreditation information there. A lot of it may say expired. A lot of it will also be active. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make an institution specific decision for the moment as to what will be acceptable for your institution. My institutional system, because my office doesn't work for a specific university, we are at the system level. So our office does credential evaluations for 5 universities in our system. We will accept institutional recognition rather than programmatic accreditation at the moment. Since they're having such systemic issues in Ghana, and we are checking with GTech and with Education USA advisors in Ghana to let us know when that is going to be resolved. Because one of the articles that we found is that the University of Ghana is one of the flagship universities, one of the flagship public universities in Ghana. Over 600 of its programs are no longer accredited. And that just seems outrageous to us. So at the moment, it's a little difficult. Now, to answer your follow-up question was, can you research this for years past? It's time for my favorite answer. It depends. You kind of can, in that the Internet Archive Wayback Machine has at least 16, 17 years of what used to be the National Accreditation Board, then became the Tertiary Education Commission in 2020. It has archived web pages. And for a lot of those years, you can go click on, say, Garden City University College or the University of Ghana, and then click on several pages of information. The problem is that not all of those pages may have been archived, say in 2012 or 2008 or whenever you're trying to look for. So you may be able to find that information and you may not be able to find that information. If you're not familiar with the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, I'll put a link to it in the chat in a minute. And I'm happy to share information on how you can use the Wayback Machine to look that information up. Does anybody else on the panel want to chime in?
I think that was thorough, Shelby.
Yes, it was, Shelby.
We get a lot of Ghana, get a
Mhm.
lot of Ghanaian nurses and actually postgraduate diploma in education students.
So Shelby, question, how does your institution assess their credentials if they're coming from institutions that are recognized,
Yes.
but their programs may not be accredited?
Well, what we're doing right now is kind of seeing if we can use the Wayback Machine. So most of the people that we're getting credentials from are not necessarily recent students. So it's not been like 2022, 2023 students. They're older students. So we're using the Wayback Machine anyway to look up programmatic accreditation information.
Mhm.
Like I said, sometimes we're lucky and we can see it right away. Sometimes all we can get is that Garden City University College was institutionally recognized. So the other thing that we're looking at, and this is more for the university colleges that have affiliations to public universities that actually award their degrees, and the university colleges themselves don't yet have the ability to grant their own degrees. That's a whole separate discussion we can get into for another time. So if we can show that the person received the diploma, say that was issued by the University of Ghana, and the teaching was done by Garden City University College, then we can safely assume that that program would have been recognized, because the National Accreditation Board would not have approved that affiliation if the university college did not have a program that was recognized.
Perfect. Thank
So
you for
we're
that.
trying to find ways to still make it possible for us to keep moving the students' application through our system and potentially, hopefully, allow them to be admitted and registered,
Mhm,
but not give up quality assurance.
mhm. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shelby.
All right, we're gonna go on to another low-hanging fruit on the questions here, and I think my colleagues will gladly jump in and chime in with me. That first one being, has the Indian NAAC website to check accreditation status been down? Folks at my institution haven't been able to access it for a while. Yes, it has. I tried to go on yesterday and I tried to go on again today, and I know it's been down. My suggestion would be to just keep trying with the hope that it will come back up. Shelby, Emily, Jasmine, do any of you been in there, tried to get in, had the same issues?
Yes.
What I typically get is that it spins for a long time and then eventually says the site can't be reached.
Right, right.
I did actually manage to access it like 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And then somebody else on our evaluation team tried to access it later in the afternoon and it was gone again. So I do think it's like some sort of
Right.
an issue. But you may also be able to use the Wayback Machine to access a page that was actually live in January.
Right.
So that's what we've done.
And for anybody that I didn't spell it out, it's the National Assessment and Accreditation Council. I think that's right.
Right.
In India. So yes, it seems to me often that the summertime is when we have a lot of these issues, and I always wonder if they're working on things and such, even though that shouldn't really be a reflection. There is a question asking if we can show how to check accreditation in the archive. I'm not sure if we can do that live.
Maybe, but do we
But-
want to answer the other questions first? And
Let's, yes, I
Yeah,
would
that-
like to do that, actually. So we have a few questions about professional degrees. One says, for Ecuador, why are the Título de Abogado, Doctorado en Jurisprudencia Odontología, sorry guys, Medico Veterinario recommended as bachelor's equivalent and not a first professional degree in the field? And we also have a similar question about Mexico and the licenciado in Derecho. And I guess what I would say is that, you know, when EDGE was originally built, it was built with the academic streams in mind and the most common pathways for education that we would encounter, that you all would encounter in your work. And so that for mainly on the academic streams, lesser emphasis on technical and vocational, and then the professional streams even less so. It's interesting in that we've been working on and talking about trying to add professional degrees to EDGE. That's a huge undertaking. And we have started that with law credentials. So what you're seeing in there is we're adding these credentials and we're talking about what represents the first professional degree in law. And what that means is, what is the degree that allows you to practice in that country? These are programs where there's a registration or a licensure that goes in hand with the academic background in order to practice that. So while we might say that something's comparable to a bachelor's degree, it's also the credential that would give you access to that profession. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking and let Jasmine and the rest of the group talk, because I'd rather you hear from them.
Well, thanks for that, Julia. I do see that we had a couple of questions where there are 2 entries for these credentials, and in one we see that we are recommending comparability to a first professional degree, and then on another page, though it's mentioned as the first professional degree under the credential advice, it says it's a bachelor's degree. What we need to understand is if we're looking at, let's say, the título de abogado or the licenciado en derecho, these are definitely first professional degrees in law. For example, in Mexico, in order to be admitted to this program, they have to have completed their upper secondary education, the bachillerato program or the preparatoria program. But the program in law is typically 5 years after secondary school completion and leads to a professional title and license. So the combined título and the licenciado means that they have finished their academic programs as well as the qualification that allows them to practice law in Mexico. With this degree, they can then be admitted to a graduate program. So in a sense, it is a first professional degree, but we can also look at it as comparable to, quote unquote, and I'm putting this in quotes, a bachelor's degree. If you're trying to admit this person into a master's program, they have completed a cycle that is at that level that we consider to be a bachelor's, but their specialty is in law, which is not something we offer at an undergraduate program. I know it's a kind of a combination of, what do I do with this? But typically these individuals are admitted to a master's program in international law, or they can go into an MBA. But in order to practice law in the United States, they have to go through other criteria with their state bar exams. So we will reassess these pages that kind of have this sort of dual language where it says it's a professional degree in law, and then there's also bachelor's comparability. This is something IASC would need to assess and see if the language needs to be refined. But look at these as first professional degrees in law. But if you're looking at admitting them into the graduate program, they have completed a 5-year cycle at a university level, and they're admissible to, as I said, international law degrees, MBAs. And I believe, Julia, your team does a lot of these evaluations for law school admissions. So if you have additional things you wish to add.
Correct. So it's just as Jasmine said, I could say it again, but it serves as representing at least bachelor's level, and that you could be admitted to a graduate level program, but it also serves the function as having the title or the license for a profession. And so in particular, what we started on here are the law degrees. And so you'll see those in EDGE. And yeah, if you see anything that you have questions about, feel free to reach out. Or if you see where we've maybe need to update something, let us know that as well.
I'm not even going to say feel free to do it. I am going to explicitly encourage you to hit the contact us button on every page. Don't do it on every page. On any page where you see there's an issue, there is a contact us button. And so when you click that, it'll let us know exactly the page that you're sending this from. So we'll be able to more quickly identify what you're suggesting we should update. And the more complete the information is, the more complete you can describe it, the easier it's going to be for us to accelerate that through the process and to get that updated. Because really, that's all we ever want to do. We want to have good information out there that you are going to be able to use in your day-to-day. Julia, back to you.
And we mean this beyond the law degrees and beyond the professional degrees. We mean this across the board with credentials. If you find something or you have a question, and if you see something missing, by all means, not only contacting us, but redacting any documentation that you might have and sharing that with us, because that just puts us further down the road, being able to address your specific issue or question. We have a question here on Ethiopia. I am going to go ahead and read it out for you all, and then we'll open it up to our panel to see if they have anything they would like to say about it. We have had several students from Ethiopia with internal marks that are much higher than their scores on the secondary school leaving exam, formerly the Ethiopian Higher Education Entrance Exam. Based on our experience and the experience of others on the ACRO forum, it seems like the SSLE results might not be an accurate reflection of the student's achievement. We are a test optional school, so we do not have SAT or ACT to factor in. We only have GPA as part of a holistic review process. The GPA calculated using the SSLE results has prevented a few students from meeting the minimum GPA for the program they want on occasion. I have noticed that the SSLE grading scale in Scalaro is much more lenient. Do you think it would be advisable for us to use the SSLE results only for verification of eligibility for higher education, but use the internal marks for grade 12 for GPA calculation? I am going to very quickly say, it sounds to me like you've done some due diligence on this and researched it and looked into things and know your institution, Becky. And so you would probably be one of the best people to make that decision on whether or not you want to use, just as you said, use the SSLE results only for verification of eligibility, but using the internal marks for grade 12 for a GPA calculation. That's all I'm going to say, but I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's turned on her camera. Emily?
Thanks, Julia. So I'm going to give the perspective of a credentials evaluation agency. Universities tend to have more leeway and are able to put more emphasis on things that they care more about. For us at IUF, we only focus on the SSLE if that is what the student has achieved, because that is the validating credential. That's what marks the end of the secondary education cycle. That's what the universities look for. So we really don't take into account the internal or high school grades. I find it interesting, actually, that you found that the internal marks are higher. That's a very interesting find, because usually in a lot of these kinds of situations, the internal marks are usually lower to try to get the student to work harder, right, and motivate them to study for the exam, because the exam is the thing that they're ultimately focusing on and need to pass. I know in the past, they looked at the universities look at the top 5 subjects, and the top 5 subjects where they earn the highest mark. So I'm not sure if that's still the case now, since there have been changes. So that's another consideration in terms of what universities look at. But again, universities in the United States may have more leeway in what they want to look at and what they feel is fairer for the student. But for us, we just look at the final validating national examination.
If I may jump in, Emily, I completely agree with your assessment, coming from an evaluation organization myself, but also someone who has had personal experience in taking external exams, having gone through the British system several years ago when it was the GCO levels, not the IGCSEs or the GCSEs. Our internal scores didn't matter, even to us as students. We had to prepare our butts off for the external exams. And because that was what universities in the UK or overseas were looking at. So I could have had the best grades throughout my Form 1 to Form 5 or 6. Didn't matter. It was what I performed on. But as Julia said, and as Emily said, as academic institutions, you have a lot more flexibility to, stretch this out. You go beyond the external exams. But as a student who had participated in this, our internal scores didn't make a difference. It was what we did on the external exams. So
yes, and the question was
food for
interesting
thought.
in that regard, right? And that we used the opposite sort of posed to us, that the external results are, so very interesting. We have, how much time do we have left? 7 minutes? We have a question here on, sorry, I just slipped this up. Better understanding the process and thinking around the US grade equivalents to UK GCE and AS level grades in EDGE. I would just add that Emily has gone, we've done extensive sort of talking about this and presenting on this. Emily, I don't know if you want to add anything here, but we have talked about this in previous EDGE user groups, I think.
Yes, we have. The main thing, it can be challenging to have to navigate all the different variations of the grading scales. And then for the GCSEs/O levels, they introduce something entirely different, which is 9-to-1. But the question here is AS and A levels. So the main thing to know is that it's basically A through E in terms of the passing grades. The main difference with A levels is that they threw in or snuck in an A star as well. And the idea is that the A star is a way to distinguish like the cream of the top. So to bring it up even like the star performers. So, but what we've done is we've treated, because whether it's A plus or A, it's still going to be, 4.0. So A star A, we make equivalent to a US grade of A. B and C is the next tier that we group, and we regard that as a B. And then D and E, which is the represents the lowest passing grades, we've grouped that together and made that equivalent to a US grade of C. And so that those are the E is basically considered the lowest passing grade, and then that's what we can say about the AS and A levels. As Julia mentioned, you may want to check some of the past webinars where we have talked about grading scales as well.
All right, and one more coming at you guys again. Do you recommend to accept 1 year of undergraduate study to U.S. bachelor's programs from the Lebanese baccalaureate exams? For example, EDGE explains the Lebanese government mandate of a year of credit, 30 semester hours from the Lebanese BAC towards a bachelor's degree in Lebanon, which is only 3 years in length. However, the credential advice only includes the equivalent to senior high school completion in the U.S. and does not include advice for awarding undergraduate credits.
I know Robert wants to answer this question, but he's not here. So who
But
would
Shelby,
like to talk about
thank
it?
you.
I'll answer this. The Lebanese BAC is based, the Lebanese system is based in large part on the French system, and the French baccalaureate people sometimes give advanced credit for that. The Lebanese government decided to give advanced credit for that. Our perspective at Adtalem is that this is for 12 years of high school, primary and secondary school, so we do not give advanced standing to the Lebanese baccalaureate. And yes, we know that they get 30 credits for that when they transfer into their bachelor's degree program. And a thing to remember is that a lot of the, several universities in Lebanon also have US regional accreditation. And so we actually sat down and did a deep dive a few years ago on this topic, and should we actually be giving them credit for the Lebanese BAC? And the research that we did decided that we were going to maintain not giving transfer credit for the Lebanese BAC. Short answer. That's a decision of the Lebanese government, and they're welcome to do what they like with their credentials, but our opinion is that that does not reach the same level as an A level. So that was just our opinion. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, same. We regard the Lebanese BAC as comparable to a US high school diploma. We do not recommend any advanced credit for it. And that's also what's reflected in EDGE.
Thank you.
Is that credit something that y'all do recognize if someone comes with a Lebanese with that they've graduated with that 30 credits and now they've achieved that bachelor's degree? That's a bachelor's degree because they
The bachelor's degree, yeah. So what we will do, if it's a US regionally accredited college or university in Lebanon, we won't evaluate that because we consider that American. But for the Lebanese universities that do give credit for that, it's still going to be a bachelor's degree equivalent. We're just going to be looking for 90 credits to convert to if we're doing a course by course evaluation for potential transfer credit, if they're transferring into an undergraduate program.
That's good to consider. What would the distinction be for transfer credit versus the completion of that program? Guys, this has been a great discussion. Thank you for all of your thoughts on all of these different topics. We have come to the end. And so here, please do come back every third Thursday of the month. We're going to be here. We're going to be talking about that, everything that we've been working on within EDGE. As we are doing regularly, when you log into EDGE, updates that have happened on countries and education systems that you've bookmarked, there will be something that comes across the top. You know, we're going to have verification resources, law credentials, ladders, it's all coming at you. So thank you for coming today. And for anyone that has any further questions, like I said, there's a contact us button on each page. And edge@acro.org is a great way to reach out with questions about administrative issues. When you have questions about content, reach out to your friends on the International Activities Group, and you can connect with colleagues about what they're doing in these types of situations. To Jasmine, to Julia, to Emily, to Shelby, to everyone that has contributed questions today, I really appreciate you. Thank you.